I don't think that there's any examples in history that I can think of where new grads would have this level of struggle entering the job market. I think that everybody recognizes, like there's some serious things happening right now in the economy.
Landing that first job after convocation requires a lot of heavy lifting, from polishing your resume and LinkedIn profile to tapping networks of peers, past employers, and instructors for potential leads. In COVID times, this can feel extra daunting. The pandemic has rocked the economy, shuttered businesses, and created uncertainty across sectors. The result is a job market unlike anything we've seen in decades. I'm Brian Allery. I'm a writer and editor for techlifetoday.ca. In this episode of Career Essentials, we'll go back 1 year to share an interview we previously recorded with NAIT marketing alumna Shannon Neighbor. Neighbor's job is to comb resumes and interview candidates to find matches for clients as a partner with Svensson Neighbor Recruiting. At the time of our conversation in spring 2020, neither of us would have guessed the pandemic would be going on this long, or that job search tips during these times would be critical to successive years of post-secondary graduates. During our chat, she shares tips for producing a dazzling resume and how to leverage the power of LinkedIn. She also shares tips for our new normal, preparing for the virtual job interview. And lastly, Neighbor answers job-seeking questions submitted by NAIT students and new grads. Shannon, welcome to the Tech Life Today podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Shannon, you have the distinction of being the first repeat guest on the Tech Life Today podcast.
Wow,
so
I'm so honored. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here for a second time. And I know a lot of people have, questions about, the climate in terms of the job market, especially new grads. And, we're all navigating new things here. So I'm happy to share my expertise and kind of give my advice and opinion on this.
Outstanding. Well, let's jump right into it then.
All right.
So in previous interviews with us, you've often emphasized the importance of networking. Right now, obviously, conventional networking is out of the question. What are some alternatives that students or recent grads can be looking at?
Yeah, so I think that there are still quite a number of opportunities to network. And in fact, if I might say so, I feel like for some folks, this is a more desirable climate to network in. And why I say that is because I feel like a lot of organizations have really been focused on how do we take what we've traditionally done in person to an online format. And so we're seeing tons of networking opportunities online through things like the various chambers of commerce, the business networking groups, whether that be a membership-based networking group or, something that anybody can join. We're seeing these organizations take that online. And a few reasons why is because, number one, everyone needs to pivot their business to a certain degree right now. We don't know when we're going to get back to, whatever the new normal is and when people are going to start to gather again. So organizations have to figure out how do we still do what we've done and, accomplish our mandate and taking that in an online format. But I also feel like there's been a huge emphasis on now more than ever business and, people need support. And so how do we develop those tools online so people can, continue to take advantage? So just as an example, Chantel and I are members of the Edmonton Business Association, and we've seen that they have hosted a number of online networking opportunities that anybody can join, so you don't have to be a member of the organization. And the great thing about that is that some of the things that make people anxious about going to in-person networking events are kind of eliminated when you're online. So you don't need to think about, say I see a group of people chatting, how do I inject myself into that conversation, or this feels a little bit awkward. With the online, there's breakout rooms and everyone's there and really there to engage with new people. And so I feel like some of that element of nervousness that people might have about in-person networking has kind of been eliminated now, which is a good thing.
We've talked about LinkedIn before on the podcast. For a new grad in particular, and especially now, how do they make the most of LinkedIn?
So I think now more than ever, it is very important to have a strong online presence in a professional aspect. And so I think that when we all think about, online and how we position ourselves professionally, LinkedIn is something that everybody thinks of. So, a few things. Number one, as we kind of acclimate to this online world and, meeting people virtually and, maybe historically, like companies are people who have not been adapters of, technology and business, they're forced to do that now. So I feel like more people are, being aware of those ways to connect with people online. And, LinkedIn is obviously one of them. And I think because now it's even more challenging when you're applying for positions because the number of candidates are so plentiful and a lot of very qualified people applying. It is using tools like LinkedIn to connect with your network, looking at who's connected to who, asking for referrals, and really leveraging that tool to the best of your ability to make connections, get recommendations, see what's going on in the business community, look at opportunities, and, being able to engage that way.
With the situation that we're in, is now the time to have lower expectations when you're on the job hunt, or at least realistic expectations?
Yeah, so I hate thinking about lowering expectations, but I do think that this is a time to manage your expectations. And I think that when we think about the kind of career that we want today, we should also, as professionals, whether that be new professionals or tenured professionals, think about what we want in our career in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and where we kind of see ourselves going, and then think about the things that we can look forward to in a career today that might help facilitate that growth down the road. So in saying that, you might be a recent graduate, let's just say from the marketing program, and maybe it's your dream to work at an agency. That might not be realistic in the economic climate that we're in right now. And, it might not be realistic in the next year even. We don't know that. However, maybe think about companies or organizations or positions that can give you the experience you're needing, or give you kind of that opportunity to affect change, opportunity to work on neat projects. Maybe it's a smaller company where you can really get behind their vision and their mission. And, think about those kind of things, not just, I want to do this right now, or this is how much money I'm hoping to make right now. It's really thinking about more of the long-term game than the short-term game right now, I think. And sometimes I feel like, people will enter the workforce and they'll say, I'm kind of settling because I really wanted to do something more, or had my eyes set on something else. And they wind up working for organizations where they spend very long, very rewarding careers, whether that be it's a larger organization and you can work your way up in the company, or you're working for a smaller company where you really can just get behind what they're doing. And there's so much satisfaction in that too. So, think about things that way, not just what I envision for myself right now. It's just kind of managing expectations, I guess.
What are some of the advantages or disadvantages of doing an interview online or virtually?
Yeah, so some of the advantages. So, for me personally, because we've taken everything online and every candidate we've met over the past 8 weeks has been virtual. Some of the things that I've enjoyed about it is, someone doesn't have to get in their car and drive to our office and meet with us and then drive back to their home or their office or wherever they're coming from. So, it does kind of save time on that end. I also feel, for me anyways, it's easier for me to take notes about the interview, typing on my laptop rather than being in person and jotting down some notes on a piece of paper and having to transcribe those afterwards. So I do like that aspect of it. I think that some of the drawbacks are, I don't think that there's anything that can quite exactly replace that human-to-human interaction, reading somebody's body language, those kind of things I think will always be important about the in-person interview. But to be fair, I don't think that nothing tragic would happen if we couldn't do in-person interviews anymore. I do think that there's a way to effectively do a virtual online interview to kind of establish those nuances that you might in person. It's just kind of getting used to doing those things. Over
Nate's social media, we asked students and recent grads to submit their questions to you for this portion of the podcast. So I'm just going to fire away with several of the questions.
All right. Okay. Lay them on me. I'm ready for it.
First one here is, how do we know if the interview went well?
So I think that you can gauge whether or not an interview went well a few different ways. So number one, some of it is just having experience being in interviews, reading someone's body language, just kind of getting a sense of, the way you're responding to questions and like the nonverbal and verbal feedback you're getting from the interviewer if you think that they are, feeling satisfied with the answers that you're giving. So I feel, for me, because I've interviewed thousands of people, I feel like I'm a pretty good read of, what's going well or what's not going well. But I feel like that's something that comes with experience, is just being in that situation. One of the things that I always encourage candidates to do is to try and kind of sell yourself at the end of an interview. And part of that can be asking, based on my responses today, were there any areas of concern? Is there any other area you would want me to elaborate on? Do you feel like I would be a good fit for the position? Do you see me fitting in with the organization? So at the end of an interview, you can actually ask for validation. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Not being pushy or anything, but just asking, like, how did the interview go? Like, do you think I would be suitable for this role? When you wrap up an interview, you should always be clear in asking the interviewer, when might I hear back from you? How will you be in touch? What are the next steps? So if someone says, I'm going to get back to you, we're going to get back to the candidates who are moving forward on Monday of next week. If it's Wednesday, you might want to follow up, or you might say, I guess I'm not moving forward.
This is a big one here. How do I get a job in this economy? I've sent out dozens of applications.
Yeah, so this is what I think. So I think the number one key to that is apply early. So when you see jobs pop up on job boards, and a lot of them you can set up notifications so you get notified right away if a position pops up that is suitable for kind of what you're looking for. Apply early. I know from experience, sometimes we post, jobs that are very, very popular, and we might get hundreds of applicants. And we have actually had jobs where in the first week we've actually pulled down the ad because we've had so many applicants that it becomes impossible for us to even sort through that many resumes. So I would encourage people to apply early and think about applying for a job literally as a job. It can be a full-time job, staying on top of job boards, engaging with people, through places like LinkedIn, and looking and applying and tailoring your resume, tailoring your cover letter, and doing that all in a very timely manner can be a full-time job, and I think that you have to be that on top of the job search. And I'll also say this about that, because people ask that question all the time, will get very frustrated. They're sending out so many resumes and they're not hearing back. There's no magic bullet to that. There's no this is what you're doing wrong. If you do this, you're going to get callbacks, you're going to get interviews. There isn't any of that. All you can do is apply early, have a resume that is a masterpiece, error-free, really articulates, what you've done, what you've accomplished in a quantifiable sense. Those are the things that you can control, but whether or not, people call you back, that's at the discretion of the person on the other end of receiving your resume.
Okay, well, you mentioned a masterpiece resume. What goes into a winning resume?
A few things. So number one, you need to have a concise and clear resume. So if at all possible, especially for newer grads who don't have, as tenured of a career history, keep the resume to one page. If you are more of a tenured professional and it's absolutely impossible to do that, 2-page is the absolute maximum a resume should ever be. Including information that is supported by data is incredibly important. So it's fine to say things in your resume like, I was an overachiever, but you have to be able to back up those things with analytical data that can support that. So for instance, if you have experience in sales and you're saying, achieved sales growth. Well, what was the sales growth you achieved? 5% year over year. So that's data that's supporting that statement that you're making. And I think that even with new grads who maybe don't have a lot of professional experience, there are still ways to utilize data to support kind of what you're claiming. So whether that be a mark you got on an assignment or an accolade or a reward or an award you received, there are ways to showcase that. So I think that that's very important to try and include information like that. I also think that the resume, get multiple people to look it over, read it over, make sure there's no spelling mistakes, mistakes in grammar. All of those things are incredibly important. And then because we're stressing the importance of also having that strong online presence, where I think on a tool like LinkedIn, you can include more information than you can on the resume. For example, projects you've worked on, or you would have some of those recommendations and endorsements there. Make sure that the information that's contained within the resume mirrors the information that is on LinkedIn. So the dates that you've worked at jobs and the courses you've taken at school are the same, because I think that it can be a definite red flag if things aren't jiving, compared to both of them.
So one of the questions there, I think you've probably answered that. How can I get experience without a job? And the person used the example, accounting jobs need 2 to 3 years of experience.
For sure. So anecdotally, I'll just tell a story here. So when I graduated from NAIT, which was in 2000, and I graduated with a diploma in marketing, my goal was to work at an agency. Like, I was so keen on the creative process around marketing, and that was really appealing to me. And every single, even entry-level job I saw online at any agency or anything remotely related to agency work required that 2 to 4 years of experience. And I thought to myself, how am I ever going to get experience if no one wants to hire someone who is inexperienced? And for me, is what I did is I took a job at an organization that was actually an IT consulting firm. And it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing, but the position that I had applied for and I ultimately got had a little bit of a marketing element. And so I thought to myself, even though this is kind of has this administrative slant and this sales support kind of slant, which is not necessarily what I want to do, it also gives me the opportunity to work in this kind of marketing capacity where nobody else does this. So maybe this is how I gain the 2 to 4 years of experience. And then eventually, once I have that, I can move on and apply with that experience that I have. So I felt for me personally, that was just kind of managing my expectations. And within accounting, I think that that's a good example, because I think that there are ways to gain experience through, for instance, there's a lot of temp agencies where they would place or hire, very inexperienced, new grads that would really be working under someone who would maybe be doing those more administrative aspects of accounting, but gain experience that way. So I feel within any industry or job function, there are ways to gather the experience. You just sometimes have to be a little bit creative and manage your expectations as to how you get there.
Here's another resume question for you. Are keywords in resumes useful when applying to large companies?
Yeah, so the applicant tracking system, I feel that's kind of where this person who asked this question is kind of going, because I get tons of questions about the applicant tracking system, and it is keyword based most often, the applicant tracking systems. 2 things. Number 1, you obviously want to capture certain keywords within your resume that are reflective of your experience and your capabilities. I think that, though, oftentimes when you apply with a resume through an applicant tracking system, you have more opportunities to provide more robust information and to include more keywords, I guess, because for anyone who's applied to a larger organization, they've probably uploaded their resume. Some of the information from that resume is being parsed into the applicant tracking system, but you can actually go into the applicant tracking system and you can put in additional keywords. So maybe that aren't necessarily in the resume, but you want to be searchable. And I mean, this is exactly how, systems like LinkedIn work as well. It is based on keywords. As a recruiter, I might put in a number of keywords, based on the attributes I'm looking for in a candidate. And if you have that in your profile, you're going to pop up. And if you don't, you're not. So I do think it is important to be conscious of potential keywords, take that information from the job posting. If you can see certain keywords being used repeatedly in the job posting, maybe consider trying to incorporate that into the resume if indeed those words do reflect who you are and what your abilities are.
Okay, here's a fun one. I've applied to several companies and have landed an interview with company A, but I would prefer to work at company B, and I'm expecting a call back soon. What can I say to A so that I can wait for B's call? I still might want to keep A open as a backup.
I love it when people hedge their bets like this. Okay, so I feel this because I feel like people have been in this situation before. This isn't, like this individual who asked this question. I mean, this isn't unusual. I feel like a lot of people have kind of...
I think I've been in this situation too before in the past, right? A lot of us have.
I feel that. In our experience, when we've had candidates kind of put us off and say, I can't decide, that is not setting the right tone. So even if the candidate comes back saying, yeah, actually, I want to accept, that's already kind of set the stage for did they really want to come work here? Is this really the right opportunity for them? And are they going to be leaving in a few months because they want to be doing something else? So I think from a candidate perspective, you have to be incredibly careful about how you're doing this and the message that that's sending, and if that's setting you up for a long-term success with that company should you ultimately decide to accept the offer. Now, sometimes you're getting close with the other offer, so you don't have to wait that long. I mean, you could always ask, employer A, can I have a few additional days to decide? And they'll either say yes or no, or can I get back to you by X date? And they'll either say yes or no. But, being transparent about I can't make a decision until then, is that okay to you? And, making sure that you're maintaining communication with them. But then also going to employer B saying, I have another offer on the table. I just want to make you aware of, and I have to make a decision by this date to see if they can kind of hurry along the process if they're interested in you as a candidate. I don't know what the right answer for this is. I mean, I think that every situation is a little bit different. I just think that in the process of trying to hedge your bets, you can leave a bad taste in the mouth of both employers. Okay,
well, that's great advice. Here's an interesting one. What is the hardest question to answer in an interview? Do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, okay. So I think that that's up to the individual. I think that the questions that candidates typically struggle the most with in an interview are, I would say, questions that are more reflective of an employer wanting to gain understanding of what your self-awareness is. And so those are questions that would be like, tell me about your weaknesses, tell me about your strengths. And I feel like those questions kind of seem a little bit cliche, and a lot of people get a chuckle, and maybe you've done some research online and you're like, oh, this is how I need to effectively answer this. And I feel like that's incredibly dangerous, because I feel when employers ask questions like that, they're really wanting to know how self-aware you are. Nobody is perfect. Nobody loves doing every aspect of their job. Nobody is so advanced in their career that they don't have anything left to learn or any way to develop professionally. Where we see most candidates struggle are answering questions like that. And I think before you go to an interview, you should do some real reflecting on, what are my weaknesses? What don't I enjoy doing? What have I been doing to, develop myself professionally? And what do I know I need to work on? And what areas am I really strong that maybe I can provide guidance or advice to somebody else on? I think that those self-awareness questions are the most challenging.
Okay, here's a different one. How can an international student land in a particular field or job?
So I think that with international students, I mean, I don't think that there's a ton of difference between, students that aren't international, competing for the same jobs. If you're both graduating from, let's say, an accounting program, you're competing for the same kind of job. I think that sometimes what we see with international students is they may have had a different career before, and then they've, come here. Let's say they've went to NAIT and they've taken something completely different. And I feel like the struggle sometimes for international students is, how do I parlay my previous experience into, what I'm wanting to do now or where I'm wanting to move my career in the future? But I think that the steps that everyone takes to kind of get into a career or get into an organization is the same. And that is, networking, that is applying for jobs early, having a good resume, and doing all of those good things remains the same.
I just want to thank you once again, Shannon, for sharing your time with us and your valuable expertise for all of the would-be job seekers out there. Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And just if I can leave with a little, note to everybody, just keep on, trying and, making those connections, applying for those jobs, and just trying your best to stay positive. And, everyone, like I said, is in this together, and really it might be tough right now, but I think that in the coming months, we're going to see things open up a little bit. And so, stay positive and keep working hard at your job search.
Thanks again to Shannon Neighbor of Svensson Neighbor Recruiting for joining me today. Thank you, Tracy Niven, for designing our artwork, and thank you for listening. In the episode show notes, you'll find related techlifetoday.ca stories, including more interviews with Shannon, such as 5 ways to succeed in the toughest job market ever, and how to make the most of LinkedIn. We also have 7 tips to improve your resume and how to write a winning cover letter. If you enjoyed what you heard, don't forget to hit the like button. See you again next time on Career Essentials.